Well, hello. Today we're going to be learning about balancing animal feed rations. I know that you've had a chance to kind of look over the terms and what's on a feed tag. This week we're really going to dive into the things that go into feed and how does one figure that out. You could actually eventually do your own rations for your animals. So I know some of this is going to be a little bit of a review, and I'm going to have to do a completely separate one to talk about Pearson square methods so that you'll understand how to do that. But I hope you're okay. Just a reminder that when we talk about rations for animals, we're really talking about that amount of feed an animal consumes in a 24-hour period. When an animal nutritionist creates a ration, they're really thinking about the total animal's needs for that entire day. When I think about my diet in COVID 19, or the type of feed and the amount that I eat, it is really not as balanced as it should be because I have access to a lot of great things that normally would not be accessible, right? When I'm stuck at school. And so that's kind of the things we have to think about what's available and what's going to give the best nutrition for our animals. In case you're wondering, animals typically are fed better than humans. And the reason is because I guess humans are really good at telling animals what to eat, but perhaps not ourselves. So, when we think about deciding what goes into an animal, we have to think about two things. One, what is the animal? What are the needs of the animal being fed? Is it in growth? Is it in lactation and reproduction? What are we trying to accomplish? Is this animal working right now? And the other is going to be the nutritional content of the feed that's available. If I was living in the southern part of the United States, cottonseed meal might be more common, although we have cottonseed meal here in Wisconsin. Whereas in Wisconsin, our typical protein source is going to be soybean meal because, oh, wait, we have lots of soybeans. So, those are some things that we're going to think about. So, um, the first thing you have to do is to decide what is the nutritional needs of my animal. What's its kind, its age, its weight, and the function for which this ration is being formulated. I always think about this like a horse that has in the winter probably chillaxed, inside, and you probably weren't working it that hard. And so you probably had it on a pretty maintenance based diet. But as you start working that horse more and more, let's say for races, you're going to feed it slightly differently because that animal needs a different set of nutrition. And if you guys think back to when we had our goats there, remember right before how we adjusted the feed up to the point at which Zip and Zig um, gave birth and then adjusted it one more time when they were producing milk because lactation really does require a lot of energy. And that does change some things. I already mentioned feed stuff or the ingredients that we use to make those feeds for animals. And it is based kind of on one, the nutritional value, and then what is available around us. So I know that we're going to talk a little bit about the nutrient content. And if you were growing your own feed, you really should get your feed tested or your corn, whatever you were producing at home, so you would have an exact idea of what the percent protein is. And protein tends to be the limiting factor. We're going to check out some nutrient content of feed stuff. Let's go to one that's super common that we would have is like number 2 corn grain, okay? And the one thing we're really going to pay attention to here is crude protein because protein and energy are the two things that are really going to help to determine what you feed an animal. And so when I sit here and look at corn, I can see that the crude protein of corn is 8.9. Now, I know the other week I had you watch a video that I created at Oregon Farm Center, and I asked the farmer if I was trying to, or the individual, Sean, if he was going to make a feed with more protein, what would he use? And he said soybean meal. So let's take a look at the protein of soybean meal. And we see that it's 44.4%. That's a lot different, like almost 4 times as much as corn. And so typically protein's your limiting factor, and that's what we're going to base it on. We know that energy and carbohydrates, which corn is known for, is also important in a diet, but it's really that protein. And I was trying to find a way to upload this video that really talked about that. Protein is expensive. Think about us right now. If you're choosing a snack and are choosing cheese or a beef stick, or almonds compared to a candy bar. Well, that might be a bad example right now, but to other things like chips. And the more protein something has, the more expensive it tends to get. So, corn, pretty prevalent too, is a little cheaper to feed than soybean meal. So we're also going to see that there's these terms like dry matter, fat, ash, NFE, TDN, DE. What? So let's take a look at that. Coming down here, there's some terms that we're going to take a look at. And I know there's some questions I'm asking you to look at, but you can come back over this PowerPoint anytime you want. By the way, the feed analysis, which is what we were looking at, is done to determine the nutrients. Typically, it's done in a laboratory, and it's really important, like I said, that if you're going to produce your own feed, like grow your own corn, that you get that checked. So, really quick, dry matter. That is the weight of a feed material after moisture has been driven out. So feed quality is based on the proportion of water in feed. We all know that water is the most essential nutrient, right? It's the one that is the most limiting factor to any of us. But there is no nutritional value beyond just water in water. So if I was going to take the weight of water, it wouldn't necessarily add more vitamins or more protein or more fat or more energy. It's pretty neutral in that matter, and that's why it's important that we take a look at that. Crude protein is the amount of nitrogen content of feed, and it's multiplied by a constant factor of 6.25. Now, I mentioned protein is crucial, and when we think about the building blocks of protein, that's amino acids. And the difference between protein and carbohydrates is one simple thing, and that is nitrogen. So both of them contain carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen, and the one difference is nitrogen. And that nitrogen is really what is critical when we think about amino acids. And so to figure out crude protein, they take that nitrogen and multiply it by 6.25, and that is your crude protein. And that's what we're really going to be basing feed on. So fat content, and we know that there are 4 fat-soluble vitamins, meaning that those 4, A, D, E, and K, can only be absorbed by the body if the animal consumes fat. If there's no fat in your diet, you cannot dissolve vitamins A, D, E, and K. And this is why you sometimes see those added into whole milk, because your whole milk naturally has fat in it. The process that they use to determine the quantity of fat is an ether extract process. So basically, they dissolve the fat in ether, alcohol, and then the remaining feed is weighed, and then a percent is calculated. The term ash really is that, because they're basically going to take your feed and burn it at a temperature of 112 degrees Fahrenheit. And whatever is left is not organic in nature, it's a mineral, and therefore they call that ash or minerals. And we know that calcium, boron, selenium, all these minerals are really important. We've talked about hindgut fermenters and ruminants and the importance of fibers or roughages in their diet. So we need to also understand what's the crude fiber. That's determined by boiling the feed material in an acid and using lab procedures to dry the feed, and then they're going to calculate the percent. Again, if we're feeding cows and goats and sheep, we really want to make sure that crude fiber is very prevalent in this diet. I wouldn't probably worry as much with pigs, although they also need fiber just like we do. NFE is nitrogen-free extract. It's the percentage of NFE is determined by subtracting the percent of water, crude protein, ether extract, ash, and crude fiber from 100. So it's basically whatever's left. And they can obviously analyze the mineral content, as we know is important. So we've already mentioned that the 2 most important nutrients, or that are found in the greatest amounts, are going to be protein and energy, or carbohydrates / fats. And we know that protein is called crude protein and is given as a percent or grams on your feed label. And I know one of the questions I asked you on our feed tag scavenger hunt was which feed had the most protein, which one had the least protein. And again, when we think about protein content, it's really critical for younger animals, for animals that are lactating like Zip and Zig, or animals that are pregnant, because those are requiring a lot more amino acids because there's things developing and changing. Um, and so energy comes from carbs and fats and some proteins, but mostly carbohydrates and fats. Most concentrates that we talked about are greater in energy than roughages. And that's because fibers, although a form of a carbohydrate, are not easy energy to break down. So energy is going to be stated as TDNs, or total digestible nutrients, and those are measured in calories. And if you're not familiar with this, a calorie is the amount of heat needed to raise the temperature of 1 gram of water 1 degree Celsius. So when I sit down to enjoy my Snickers bar, I think it's like 210 calories. That means I, after eating that, would be able to raise 210 grams of water by 1 degree Celsius, or 1 gram, 210 degrees Celsius change with the energy that I just consumed. And we know that we need calories because even our mammal bodies at rest, and perhaps COVID-19, you haven't done as much as you wished, but our bodies are still burning calories. Even if you're sleeping 12 hours a day, you're still burning anywhere from 60 to 100 calories an hour. And we know that if you're an active person, like some of my kiddos that are enjoying working or being outside, you're probably burning a lot more. And so calorie is kind of small. So we're going to look at calories either as kcals or kilocalories, or mcals, which are megacalories. A kcal is 1,000 calories, an mcal is 1,000,000 calories. And that's a little more accurate when we're thinking about cattle. We're not talking 1 calorie or 1 Snickers bar. We're talking like, hey, 5 Snicker bars for a kcal, and you can do the math for the mcal. So anyways, that's really kind of some of the important stuff. I'm going to, break down here, and then I'm going to have to take a break and then come back with a different video to kind of explain a Pearson square. But again, if you were looking to feed an animal and make your own ration, you need to know what kind of energy needs that these animals have. The more someone weighs, or the more something weighs, obviously the more calories it needs, because that body has to maintain itself. And so that's going to change things. I mean, I could look at a mature workhorse. It is going to weigh 900 pounds, and it's going to need 36.2 mcals. And a colt that is just weaned, weighing a third of that, would need 23.4. So it's not a huge jump, but it's obviously a jump. And so we have to take that into consideration. We look at what a pregnant sow would need, and we look at the nutritional needs of a dairy cow, obviously quite different because of what we're asking those animals to do. And the last little thing here I'm going to talk about before I make another video, so hopefully you can see, I did try to go in and use my smartboard, and it's really stupid, and I couldn't record, so I'm really sorry. This is going to be kind of wonky, but we'll get through it, right? It just would be way better in person, but hey, you get to hear my great voice while Bogart's sitting right next to me listening to me talk. So this final thing is going to be a little bit of a challenge because my students struggle a little bit when I'm present. So we're going to see how we can do this together virtually. And please, if you have questions, let me know, because the first time I saw it, I was like, what? You want me to do what? But it's going to work out. So this is called the Pearson square. And we see over here, we have a square. It's really nice. Pearson must have come up with this. It's fantastic. So anyways, what we're going to do in the center of this square where I'm circling is going to be the protein that I'm aiming for in the diet. And we're going to talk about perhaps maybe 2 common ingredients that we want to include and see how we can figure out how many pounds of each of those I would need. Now, one of the problems of this method is it's really great at determining protein, but it kind of neglects the idea of minerals and vitamins. So you do have to take a look at that to make sure that you're balanced for the nutritional needs of your animal.